I grew up with grease in my blood and engines in my dreams. My father was a mechanic before me, and his father before him. Our repair shop sat on the edge of the old industrial district, where cracked roads met iron fences and old warehouses slept like rusted giants. People brought us cars that others had given up on, engines that coughed, frames that sagged, transmissions that screamed in pain. We worked with our hands, our backs, and whatever tools hadn't broken that week. There was never much money, but there was always work. I didn't complain, not even when my friends moved to the city, found office jobs, wore cologne that cost more than my boots. I was a mechanic. I fixed what was broken. I didn't expect the world to give me much beyond that. I never believed in blind dates. They always sounded like setups for humiliation, two strangers forced to pretend they had something in common just because someone else thought it was a good idea. But my friend Rami wouldn't let it go. He said I'd been single too long. He said working 12-hour days and eating dinner from a dented lunchbox would dry out my soul. He said his wife had a cousin's friend's sister who was perfect for me. I told him no 5 times. On the 6th, I was too tired to argue. He handed me a scrap of paper with the restaurant name, date, and time scribbled like a doctor's prescription. I asked him for a name, a description, anything. He just grinned and said, "You'll know." That was the first sign I should have stayed home. The restaurant was in the new business district, where towers of glass rose like polished spears and every valet looked like they judged your shoes before your face. I showed up on my one decent shirt, white, no stains, only missing one button near the cuff, black jeans that had only a few faded patches, and boots I'd scrubbed with a wire brush. My truck coughed into the lot like it was clearing its throat at high society. I parked at the far corner so the valets wouldn't have to pretend not to laugh. Inside, the lighting was low and golden, like expensive whiskey. Tables were evenly spaced on hardwood floors that didn't creak. The clink of glasses sounded rehearsed. I felt like a wrench left on a piano. People wore suits tailored to silence, dresses that whispered money, watches that could pay my rent for a year. I told myself to get through the night, be polite, then go home and pretend it never happened. Rami had said the reservation was under the name Nadia. I walked to the host stand, cleared my throat, and said I was meeting someone. The host, a tall man with hair too perfect to be real, asked for the name. I gave it, and he glanced at the screen, then nodded and pointed to a table near the center of the room. A single seat was empty across from a woman in a green dress, her hair like dark silk pinned at the back. She looked elegant, composed, quiet. I didn't know if she was my date. Rami hadn't given me a description, but she was at the table the host indicated. So I walked over. She didn't look up when I approached. Her eyes were focused on the glass in front of her, untouched. I pulled the chair back quietly and sat. I took a breath, rehearsed a greeting in my head, then said, "Hi. She lifted her eyes, and my voice died before my name could escape. She was beautiful, but not in a polished, rehearsed way. Her face held something fragile yet steady, like a flame behind glass. Her eyes, a pale amber, seemed to look through and around things rather than at them. But something else struck me, a stillness in her posture. Her hands lay on the table, fingers gently curled, unmoving. The chair she sat in was slightly wider than the others, with armrests that looked reinforced. I didn't understand immediately. "You're early," she said, softly. Her voice was calm, low, measured like each word was careful not to startle the air. "Traffic was light," I said, though the truth was I'd driven slow, unsure if I should turn back. She nodded. Silence settled between us like a folded cloth. I waited for her to speak again, but she didn't. I glanced around the room, trying to act comfortable. My palms felt too big, my shirt too stiff. Finally, I asked, "Have you been waiting long?" "No," she said, and her gaze dropped again to her glass. I was about to try another question when a man in a suit sharp enough to cut glass hurried toward our table. His eyes were wide with alarm. He leaned slightly toward her and whispered, "Miss, is everything all right? Should I call Mr. Ellison?" She shook her head once. "It's fine." The man turned his attention to me, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. He opened his mouth to speak, then hesitated. Before he could say anything, another voice called from behind, "Sir. Sir, excuse me." I looked back. The host who'd seated me was striding toward our table, face pale. 2 servers followed behind him like backup. "Sir," the host said, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." He glanced at the woman, then back at me. Your reservation is actually at the table near the window. I frowned. But you pointed me here. That was my mistake, he said quickly, eyes flicking to the woman again. This table is reserved for Miss Ellison. The name didn't register at first. Then I remembered reading something about the Ellison Group, one of the city's biggest corporate empires. Their CEO was practically royalty in suits and profit reports. My stomach tightened. I'm sorry, I said to her, standing halfway. I was told. It's fine, she said, her voice still calm. You can stay. The host nearly choked. Miss Ellison, your father will. I said it's fine, she repeated, without looking at him. The host swallowed hard, bowed his head slightly, and retreated. The servers followed. I sat again slowly, unsure if this was kindness or a trap. I didn't mean to intrude. You didn't. She placed her hands gently on her lap. I'm supposed to be meeting someone, I said, though now I wasn't sure if that was true or some elaborate prank. So am I, she replied. I blinked. Oh, perhaps you're him, she said, though she didn't sound convinced. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Me, grease-stained mechanic from a shop that smelled of oil and failure, sitting across from the daughter of one of the richest men in the city. And yet, she looked at me like I was just there. Not a mistake to be corrected, not a blemish to be hidden. Just another person at her table. I'm Daniel, I said, unsure if names still mattered. Liana, she said. The name settled in the air like a droplet of ink in water. I glanced at her hands and noticed something subtle I'd missed before. She hadn't adjusted her posture once. Her lower body was slightly angled, but her torso remained fixed. Then I saw it, the faint outline of a wheelchair tucked beneath the table, hidden by the linen cloth. I felt a jolt of realization. She wasn't just seated differently. She was paralyzed. She caught me noticing, though I hadn't meant to stare. It's all right, she said. People always wonder. I wasn't. I began, but she offered a faint smile that told me she'd heard the same denial many times. Before I could say anything else, a commotion near the entrance drew attention. A tall man in a charcoal suit stormed in, his expression like a thundercloud. The restaurant staff followed nervously. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on our table. His stride was sharp, authoritative, used to people clearing his path without being asked. I didn't need an introduction to know who he was. Even if you didn't follow business news, his face appeared on billboards, magazines, interviews. Thomas Ellison, CEO of Ellison Group. Billionaire. Power broker. A man who shaped industries like clay. He approached with a tension that made the air shrink. Liana, he said, his voice calm but tight at the edges. Father, she replied, as though greeting a breeze. His eyes flicked to me. They narrowed, measuring, dissecting. You are not who we arranged. That confirmed it. I was at the wrong table. My face heated. I started to rise. Sorry, I was seated here by mistake. He raised a hand slightly, stopping me with a gesture that said decisions belong to him. Who are you? Daniel, I said. I'm supposed to be meeting someone else. Not anymore, he said, and there was no malice in his voice, just dismissal. Like clearing a desk. Father, Liana said quietly. I asked him to stay. He turned to her, and the hardness in his eyes softened only a fraction. You don't know him, and the one you arranged for me? She asked. Do I know him? His jaw tightened. He is a suitable match. Suitable for whom? She asked. He didn't answer. The silence between them vibrated like a held breath. I realized I was still half standing, unsure whether to sit or run. Finally, I said, I'll go to my table. It's fine. You will sit, he said, not looking at me. His gaze remained fixed on his daughter. Until I confirmed the situation. I'd grown up around loud men who threw their weight like hammers, but this was something different. His authority didn't shout, it pressed. I didn't want trouble, especially not in a place where the napkins probably cost more than my toolbox. But before I could protest, a woman in a red dress approached. Mr. Ellison, she said softly, touching his arm. The investors are waiting. He didn't take his eyes off Liana. 2 minutes. She nodded and stepped back, casting a curious glance at me. He returned his attention to his daughter. We will speak later. She gave no response, no nod, no resistance. He looked at me once, then turned and walked away with the woman in red, 2 assistants trailing behind. I exhaled, realizing I'd been holding my breath. Liana reached for her water glass and lifted it carefully, her grip steady though her wrist moved delicately. She took a sip, set it back, and said, if you'd like to leave, I won't be offended. I sank back into the chair. I should probably find the right table. You can, she said. Or you can stay and pretend you belong here. I huffed a quiet laugh. I'm not a good pretender. Neither am I, she said. I hesitated. Are you really on a blind date? Yes, she said. My father arranged it. He believes business partnerships should be personal. And you don't agree. She traced the rim of her glass with one finger. I believe people should be allowed to choose the ones who sit across from them. I couldn't argue with that. A waiter approached cautiously, like he was handling glass. He asked if we were ready to order. I glanced at her. She nodded, so I picked something simple, roasted chicken, whatever that meant here. She ordered grilled salmon. The waiter disappeared like smoke. I'm not who you were meant to meet, I said after a while. I'm not either, she replied. I raised an eyebrow. You're not yourself. She almost smiled. I'm not the version of me they expect. I didn't know what to say to that, but I understood it in a way that surprised me. She looked at my hands. You have scars. I glanced at my knuckles, always nicked, always healing. Occupational hazard. You work with machines, engines, mostly, repairs, rebuilds, whatever people can't afford to replace. She studied my hands like they held a story. You must be good at fixing things. I try, I said. Sometimes they're too far gone. And people? She asked. I don't fix people. Maybe not, she said, but you don't seem afraid of what's broken. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. Most people saw grease-stained fingers and assumed I was good only for turning bolts and lifting heavy things. She saw something else, or maybe she didn't see it all, maybe she was just making conversation. She glanced at the chair I occupied. If my father returns and asks you to leave, don't take it personally. I wouldn't blame him, I said. I don't exactly fit the decor. She tilted her head slightly. Do you think appearances guarantee substance? I shrugged. In places like this, yeah. She looked around the room. Then this place must be overflowing with it. I followed her gaze. Expensive suits, polished shoes, manicured smiles. I'd worked long enough in the shadows of polished things to know most shine hid rust underneath. We fell into a quiet that wasn't heavy. I could hear cutlery clinking on plates around us, the occasional soft laugh, the pop of a champagne bottle at a distant table. I wondered what my actual blind date looked like. Probably already gone after waiting 5 minutes and seeing I wasn't worth it. Daniel, she said suddenly. Yeah, when you walked in, what did you think of me? The question startled me. I answered honestly. I thought you looked calm. Like you were somewhere else in your head. And when you realized, I hesitated, that you're in a wheelchair. She nodded. I hoped I didn't offend you. You didn't, she said. But most people apologize for noticing. I wasn't staring, I said. I know, she said. It's all right. Our food arrived, each plate arranged like a painting. I'd never eaten chicken that didn't come with bones or sauce from a jar. I cut a piece, trying not to saw at it like a barbarian. She ate slowly, with precise movements. Can I ask what happened? I said, then immediately regretted it. Sorry, that's not my place. It's fine, she said. She wiped her lips gently with a napkin. Car accident. 3 years ago. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be, she replied. It already happened. I nodded, unsure what else to say. People think paralysis is the worst part, she said after a moment. It isn't. I looked up. What is? The way the world rearranges itself around you, she said. The way strangers see you as a question, and family sees you as a project. The way choices vanish quietly, like they were never yours. I didn't have an answer. I just listened. And yet, she said softly, you sat down without knowing who I was. By accident, I said. I was supposed to be somewhere else. Perhaps, she said, or perhaps you were exactly where you needed to be. A part of me wanted to believe that, though I didn't know why. She continued eating, and I followed. The flavors were delicate, balanced, nothing like the greasy spoon diners I'd grown up around. I wondered what she tasted when she ate, whether food still held pleasure when so much else had changed. Halfway through the meal, a vibration hummed from her clutch bag on the table. She ignored it, then again. Finally, she opened it and pulled out a phone. She pressed a button, held it to her ear. Yes, father, she said. I hadn't seen him return, but his voice echoed faintly through the speaker. His tone was low, intense. She listened without interrupting, her face still. Then, when he finished, she said, I'm having dinner. I'll be home later. She ended the call before he could reply, the phone aside and resumed eating. He worries, I said. He controls, she corrected. Same thing to some people. She looked at me. And to you. I fix engines, I said. Not families. She didn't smile, but something in her eyes shifted, like a door opening a crack. A few minutes later, a couple at the next table recognized her. They whispered, trying not to be obvious. Soon, a man in a pale blue suit approached. Excuse me, he said politely. Aren't you Liana Ellison? She looked up. Yes, my wife and I saw the interview you did last year about accessibility in urban design. Your insights were impressive. Thank you, she said. If it's not too forward, could we get a photo? Our daughter is studying architecture and... Not now, she said gently. I'm eating. He blinked. Of course. My apologies. He stepped back, embarrassed. His wife touched his arm, and they retreated. I glanced at her. You get that a lot. Enough, she said. You didn't seem thrilled. I'm not a monument, she said. I don't exist for display. I nodded. I understood more than I could explain. People like me weren't recognized in restaurants like this. But being recognized didn't always mean being seen. As we ate, she asked about my work. I told her about the shop, about engines that came in seized with rust, about customers who cried when their cars started again because they thought they were out of options. I told her about my father's hands, how they shook when the weather changed, how he still refused to retire. I didn't usually talk so much, but she listened like each word was worth something. And you? I asked. What do you do? Before the accident, I studied mechanical design, she said. I wanted to build exoskeletons in accessible vehicles. My father planned for me to take over his philanthropic division eventually. And now I attend meetings and make appearances when it suits his goals. You don't want that. I want to build things, she said. Not be one. I felt that like a hit to the ribs. When I was first injured, she said, cutting a piece of salmon, I thought the chair would be the hardest part. But it wasn't. The hardest part was how quickly everyone around me redefined what I could be. What I was allowed to be. And what did you decide? She looked at me, and for the first time her voice held a spark. That they were wrong. A slow warmth crawled into my chest. The waiter returned, asking if we wanted dessert. I started to decline, but she said, yes. The chocolate torte. Then she glanced at me. And whatever he wants. I ordered the simplest thing, vanilla custard. When the waiter left, I said, you didn't have to get dessert. I like chocolate, she said. Fair enough. When the desserts arrived, she ate hers in small, deliberate bites. I tasted mine and realized it was the best thing I'd eaten in years. Daniel, she said suddenly, fork paused midair, what do you think people see when they look at you? I shrugged. A mechanic. A man with worn clothes and calloused hands. And does that bother you? No, I said, but sometimes I wish they'd wait until I speak before they decide who I am. She nodded slowly. I feel the same, though for different reasons. I took a breath. What do people usually assume? That I am fragile, she said. Or inspirational. Both are lies. I couldn't help but ask, what are you, then? She held my gaze, tired of being defined by the chair beneath me and the father behind me. I looked down at my plate, unsure how to respond to honesty that sharp. A few minutes passed in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Then she said, would you like to see something? Sure, I said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small tablet. She tapped the screen a few times, then handed it to me. On it were sketches, detailed mechanical designs of wheelchairs, lift systems, adaptive controls, exoskeletal frames. They were beautiful, precise, filled with intent. You drew these? I asked. Yes. These aren't just concepts. They're functional. They could be, if someone funded them, she said. Your father wouldn't. He funds what makes him look charitable, she said. Not what makes people independent. I studied the designs again. These could change lives. I know, she said simply. Why not build them yourself? She gave a small, humorless laugh. With whose lab? With what team? From inside which gilded cage? I opened my mouth, then closed it. She was right. We finished dessert quietly. The plates were cleared. Around us, the dinner crowd thinned. Her father hadn't returned. My supposed date hadn't appeared. And I sat across from a woman I wasn't meant to meet, in a place I didn't belong, feeling something I hadn't expected, ease. When the check arrived, I reached for it out of habit. The waiter looked alarmed. Sir, it's been covered. By who? I asked. Mr. Ellison, he said. Before he left, I glanced at her. She rolled her eyes slightly. Of course he did. I can pay, I said. At least for my part. She shook her head. He didn't pay for you. He paid to end the evening on his terms. I let my hand fall away. When we were ready to leave, I stood and moved around the table to assist with her chair, unsure if she wanted help. She noticed and said, I can manage, but thank you. With precise movements, she guided her chair back and away from the table. It was motorized, subtle, elegant. May I walk you out? I asked. You may walk beside me, she said. We moved through the restaurant, her chair gliding silently, me a step behind. People glanced, some with curiosity, some with whispers held behind manicured hands. She ignored them, so did I. Outside, the night air was cool, carrying the scent of wet pavement and city lights. A black car waited at the curb, sleek and tinted. A driver stepped out and opened the rear door. She didn't move toward it. Miss Ellison, the driver said, your father instructed. My father isn't here, she said calmly. I'll call when I'm ready. The driver hesitated, then nodded and stepped back into the car. I didn't know what to say. She turned her chair slightly toward me. Thank you for not leaving when you realized the mistake, she said. Thank you for not asking me to, I replied. She studied my face for a long moment, those amber eyes unreadable yet searching. Then she said, if I told you I wanted to show you something tomorrow, somewhere not on my father's map, would you come? I blinked. You'd want that. She didn't smile, but something lit in her gaze. Yes, I don't exactly blend in with your world, I said. Then don't, she said softly. I swallowed. All right. She reached into her bag, took out a small card, and handed it to me. On it was a phone number, nothing else. Call me at noon, she said. I'll send you the address. I nodded. I will. She turned her chair and glided toward the waiting car. The driver hurried out again, helped secure the chair with a mechanism built into the vehicle. As she was about to enter, she looked back at me. For the first time since I'd sat at her table, she smiled, not a polite curve of lips, but a quiet, real thing that reached her eyes. Then she was gone, the car pulling away into traffic like a shadow swallowed by night. I stood on the sidewalk, card in hand, heart unsteady in my chest. I looked down at my reflection in a darkened window, shirt slightly wrinkled, boots scuffed, hair a little messy from the workday. A mechanic who'd sat at the wrong table and met the daughter of a man who could buy the city brick by brick. I didn't know what tomorrow would hold, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was just there. And maybe, just maybe, exactly where I needed to be.